Good evening and welcome to tonight's Lithgow City Council meeting of the 23rd of May 2022. I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land who are on here today and pay my respect to those past, present and emerging. Declaration of webcasting. I inform all those in attendance at this meeting that the meeting is being webcast and that those in the attendance should refrain from making any defamatory remarks concerning any person, councillor or employee, and refrain from discussing those matters subject to closed council proceedings as indicated in clause 14.1 of the Code of Meeting Practice. Any apologies tonight? Councillor Goodsell will be a few minutes late this evening. Declarations of interest. Councillors have the opportunity to declare any interest in items on the agenda and inform the council and public if they will be leaving the chambers during the debate and voting on that item. Any declarations of interest this evening? Thank you. Confirmation of the minutes of the last council meeting, please. Could I have
Move that, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Have a seconder, please.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. Commemorations and announcements. On behalf of the Lithgow City Council, I would like to express sincere sympathy and condolences to families who have lost loved ones since the last council meeting.
Sorry, Mayor Statham, if I could please, if that's okay, I just quickly want to mention Norman Ford as well. He was the ex-council worker. I know that you've mentioned everybody, but I just want to make mention of Norman Ford, who did actually work for council a while back, and he was a Portland resident, and you both know, I and you both knew him. And I also want to congratulate Andrew G on his re-election to federal parliament. Thanks, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Yes, a very sad loss of Norman Ford from Portland, and our sympathy to their family. Public forum?
Madam Mayor, before we go into public forum, I have a question, which is, are you going to apologise for the comments you made at the council meeting last month in relation to comments made by Councillor McGee about Peter Watson 2LT? Councillor McGee, to his credit, did withdraw the comments, but you did not. And I remind you that what you said was, I would have to agree with that, that's Councillor McGee's comments. I'm sorry for that, is what occurred. Councillor Goodsell then asked, how do I call a point of order on the Mayor? And Mayor Statham replied, no, I have proof of that. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. And Mr Watson knows. Later, after an interjection, can I ask why the camera's not, thank you. And later, after an interjection from the public gallery, you further said, I will not discuss what has happened between Mr Watson and council. It is not the right place. I'm going to ask Councillor McGee, I am not going to ask Councillor McGee to withdraw what he said. I now ask you to apologise to Mr Watson or clearly state that you have no intention of doing so.
No worries at all, Councillor Leslie. I apologise profusely. Thank you. Public forum, thank you this evening.
Mayor, we have one person who's registered to speak, Martin Smith.
Hello. Good evening, esteemed Mayor Statham, councillors and council staff. Thank you for this opportunity to address you today. Recently on local media, it's been advertised that council's latest vision for the future, called Our Place, Our Future, has been released for public appraisal and comment. I've sort of took the time and went and had a look at it myself earlier this week. It identifies projects that council proposed to do in the next year, and it was outlining where the finances for these projects were going to come. It also had a longer vision. I believe it was 10 years, possibly 22 to 2032 or something of that nature. Firstly, I would like to commend all of the projects that have been identified by council for improvement in our community. The reason I initially took interest in the council's Our Future or Our Place, Our Future, was to see if council had found funding to address an issue that has been affecting me directly. That is the inadequate stormwater drainage from the bottom of Coupro Street, where it meets Main Street, in Farmers Creek. As you're aware, we had some pretty nasty floods earlier this year, and that region was one of 3 regions along Main Street which were flooded to the point where traffic couldn't cross it, and it caused a lot of damage to property and a lot of inconvenience to people. It's my understanding that the particular issue that I'm talking about, the one from the bottom of Coupro Street, it's my understanding that council has identified this piece of infrastructure as needing upgrading and has known about this for some time. And when I looked at the Our Place, Our Future document, and I looked under the financing of this, no funding had been given to this project in the draft budget so far. I would like, ideally, that council do find some funding to do this. I've just sort of come up with such a little overview that I've sort of come, because I live there. There's a train line that has been built parallel to Main Street, and this effectively acts like a dam, restricting the natural drainage of surface stormwater for a large part of the southeast corner of Lithgow City. Now, the water would have, before this train line was ever built, the water would have just naturally moved down to the creek. There would be no flooding events. There might be flooding events in creeks as the creek swelled, but this damming of the water wouldn't have occurred. So it's important that, I might be cutting my own throat here, but this problem isn't one of a natural disaster. It's actually one of poorly designed human...
Excuse me, Mr Smith. Councillor Coleman has moved an extension. Could I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Continue. Thank you, Mr Smith.
Thank you very much. The storm event, I guess you can identify as a natural disaster, but it's very likely that if the train line hadn't been built, that this water would have moved down to the creek as it naturally would have, and probably as it naturally has been doing for thousands of years. But this train line effectively is a dam. Now, I think council has a very, very strong argument to go to state government and say this piece of infrastructure is their responsibility, and when they built it, they never built the necessary drainage. So they put the train line in. Everybody else in New South Wales has benefited from the train line. It's been great for business, it's been great for the economy, but for those poor people who had houses on the other side of it, it hasn't been good. So I think it needs to be addressed. It's not a problem of a natural disaster. This is a problem that's been made by man. And in hindsight, it should have been done better. And I just wish to point this out to council so that you can use this as an argument to get some money for the funding, because you haven't found funding for this project, as far as I'm aware. And I think it's urgent that funding is found to fix it up. I've spoken to locals who've been there for 80 years, and the same problem has been happening year in, year out. And at my particular spot where I am, it floods on average, say 2 to 3 times a year, to the point where it restricts traffic. So, and every time that happens, I'm straight on the phone and I'm ringing up the police, because I don't want the trucks driving through and the 4-wheel drives driving through, because what it does is it creates a wake and a wash, and that water then comes up and ingresses into the properties even worse, or it ingresses and when it wouldn't. So anyway, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you, Mr Smith. Certainly council staff and the General Manager and I will take that on board. Councillor Bryce and myself did inspect that area, and we realised there was a lot of blackberries and things in there along the train line that needed to be you know.
I like the blackberries, they taste good.
Anyway, thank
I need
you.
some
We
drainage.
do appreciate you coming and speaking tonight.
Okay.
And council staff will probably contact you in the next couple of weeks. And the General Manager would also like to make a comment. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for those words, and again putting a spotlight on this issue, which we have identified as a problem area. I will treat that as a submission to the plan, which is out on exhibition. When the plan comes back, we'll elaborate and respond to everything that you've said, and then so the council will have a regard for what you've said when it adopts the plan for next year. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Councillor.
Could I?
Anybody
through
just
the
wishing
mayor-
to speak? Sorry?
Through the Mayor, could I ask a question, just to revise? Is it appropriate to ask a question for you to the staff of any actions that are planned or proposed?
I think the General Manager just demonstrated that he has already been speaking with the staff. The staff are very well aware of this. You happy to speak?
Mayor, we could also.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, we do have matters afoot and the like, so I think it would be prudent to put on the public record what council is doing in the meanwhile until we get to the grand solution of funding and all.
Thank you very much through you, Mayor Statham. We have indeed identified the intersection of Main Street and Cupro Street as an area of concern, and we've been actively working towards design solutions to rectify the issue. It is a very difficult scenario, as the main street doesn't just carry traffic, but it's also home to all of our public utilities, gas, water, electricity, telco, stormwater and the like. There's also the difficulty of that rail line. We do have a design to triplicate the underlying stormwater infrastructure, but that's only part of the solution. As you correctly note, the rail line does form almost a dam wall, as you say. We're in the process of looking to install a second viaduct, which is just at design stage at the moment, which would act to accommodate any additional surface flow. This all does come at fairly significant cost, in excess of 1.5 million at the moment, and we're actively working to try and gather those or secure those funds through state and federal grants. We've currently made one application of each government, of both the state and the federal government. Unfortunately, both of those have been unsuccessful at this time, but we will continue to pursue this project at every available opportunity.
Thank you, Mr. Edgecombe.
Just a comment, like you were suggesting that another viaduct would be built to put this infrastructure in. Would that also accommodate foot traffic to be able to go down to the swimming pool and the likes? Is that it's
In draft form, I reiterate, it's a draft proposal, but absolutely yes. It's a dual focus. We would like to increase pedestrian safety, as it is identified as a pedestrian route of interest, but also accommodate flood water in the event of overland flow and that sort of thing. Yes, absolutely.
I very much look forward to seeing the plans.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Is there anyone else wishing to speak at public forum tonight? We'll move on to the Merrill Minute.
Merrill Minutes.
It is with pleasure for me to recognise the very successful Opera Gala night held at the Union Theatre on the Saturday the 30th of April. This was one of the first professional performances held in this historic theatre since undergoing major renovations. So it was something of a test for the theatre itself and the level of community interest in the cultural performances. The Opera Gala event was a sellout with almost 300 guests who were entertained by well-known arias from the Verdi's La Traviata, Mozart's Magic Flute, Bizet's Carmen and Puccini's La Boheme, the much-loved Flower Duet by Delibes and more. Lithgow was very fortunate to have an ensemble of such well-known and high-calibre opera singers, including mezzo-soprano Deborah Humble, soprano Julie Lee Goodwin, tenor Matthew Reardon, and baritone Simon Leveson, and piano Sherilyn Kimoli. The successful event showed that Council and the New South Wales Government were right to invest in the theatre's upgrades over recent years. It also showed the community is looking for this type of cultural experience. I spoke with many guests on the night who were overwhelmingly excited and hopeful that Council will bring more performances to the theatre. The opera singers themselves spoke very favourably of the event and most importantly said that the theatre acoustics are very good. Further to the world-renowned accompanying pianist Sherilyn Kimberley said how lucky we were to have such a fantastic grand piano in the theatre. It was an amazing event, all the more so because it included a photographic exhibition in the theatre gallery space courtesy of Gang Gang Gallery and food and drinks. Lithgow has been lacking a strong night economy for some time, so I'm hopeful that the success of this event will start to turn that around. I would like to acknowledge the council staff who have worked long and hard to bring the Union Theatre up to the standard that can host such a high-class event. I also want to acknowledge the people who promoted the event, especially Gay McFarland, a member of Council's Community Development Committee and a singer herself, who pitched the idea of an opera gala to the council more than 2 years ago. I'd like somebody please to move my Merrill Minute.
I'll move it.
Thank you. All those in favour say aye.
Before we move, I'd like to say a few words as well in support, Ms Statham.
Thank you.
I'm pleased that you mentioned Gay McFarlane. She did work tirelessly and was a member of the Council's Community Development Committee, which you and I both sat on in the previous council. It was a lovely evening, and I would also like to congratulate all those involved. But yeah, a big kudos to Gay McFarlane. She's just an amazing woman.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Staff reports, the General Manager's report.
Madam Mayor, before we do that, can I ask a question about the agenda? Which is, last Tuesday, there was a flurry of phone calls at about 10 to 6. At least I got one and Councillor Coleman got one because we're in the same car together, about wanting us to, checking if we were going to be at the council chamber here for the Economic Development Committee. Now, I thought that was good, and that development committee is clearly an important item. We're dealing with the Lithgow Regional Marketing Cooperative, the Hassans Walls Trail running event, the future direction for the Seven Valleys concept, and the regional economic development strategies. My point is that if it was so important to ensure that our councillors were going to be here for the meeting on Tuesday, why is the minutes of that particular council meeting not on this current business paper? I know it's tight, but if it was tight, then either you called the meeting earlier or you bring a late item. But as it is, we're rush, and now we don't deal with the matter until the end of June. It seems not a reasonable position, and I'd like to ask why this is so.
Mr. General Manager.
As Councillor Leslie acknowledged, the timelines were tight. In fact, the business paper had substantially closed by the time of that meeting. We can look at the timing of the committee meetings relative to the ordinary meetings in the future, but certainly, of course, the whole meeting was broadcast for the public to view as well.
But nothing can be done until the minutes are endorsed by the council.
General Manager's report, thank you.
I'm happy to move with an amendment.
Point of order, can we please go back to the Merrill Minute? It needs to be put and it needs to be carried, so let's go back to procedure.
Well,
if we could.
Councillor Leslie, Councillor Goodsell, your amendment?
This is to the first item in the business paper?
No.
Sorry.
No.
She didn't.
Could I have a mover, please, for the Merrill Minute? Not a mover, could I have a seconder? Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Marnie. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Thank you. No, that's for the first. It's for the first. Next item. You're going to answer. You're going to answer Stephen Leslie. Yeah. Did.
Sorry, can you ask me to repeat?
Could you please repeat that remark you made, please, Councillor Leslie, for the General Manager, so he can reply to that? Thank you.
Forgot what it was.
All right, we'll move on then. General Manager's report, thank you.
I was happy to move it with an amendment.
Your amendment, thank you, Councillor Goodsell.
My amendment would be that Lithgow City Council gives 6 months' notice of intention to discontinue membership with West Rock, and the report, dot point 2, a report be brought back to identify the material benefits to be gained by joining Central New South Wales joint organisations, including the cost per annum.
Could I have a seconder for that, thank you?
Mayor, may I repeat that, sorry?
Yes, thank you.
So it was that Lithgow City Council gives 6 months' notice of intention to discontinue membership with West Rock. Dot point 2, a report be brought back identifying the material benefits to be gained by joining Central New South Wales joint organisation, including the costs per annum.
Could I have a seconder for that? Oh, you've got a seconder, Councillor McGee, thank you. Councillor Goodsell, would you like to speak to that? Thank you.
Yes, I would. So clearly we sit in the middle between urban and rural. And in fact, we don't need to be part of any joint organisation. The General Manager's identified that we're receiving nothing of any material benefit. And consider joining Central New South Wales would be a good idea, but we also need to see that we'll be getting material benefit out of that. The annual report that they provided from West Rock was very, I thought, shallow.
Councillor McGee, just come through the chair, thank you. Councillor Leslie, please refrain from making derogatory remarks, thank you. It's not necessary.
Point of order, Madam Mayor. I
What
made
is
no derogatory remarks at that point.
You please, Councillor Goodsell.
So I think if the General Manager brings a report back, we can clearly see whether we're going to get bang for buck. $46,000 a year is a lot of money, and then we can either consider that we don't join a joint organisation, either or.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against that? Councillor McGee.
Yes, I think it's been a dubious membership for the West Rock thing from everything that I've seen in emails and things like that. So I totally support Councillor Goodsell's motion.
Anybody else wishing to speak?
I will, Mayor Statham, if I could.
Yes, Councillor Comm.
I actually support Councillor Goodsell's notice of motion. I actually attended the recent meeting. I felt we were there for 3 hours and I couldn't see any benefit to Lithgow at all. I actually support you in this matter. It was very city-centric and it was quite frustrating that Lithgow wasn't mentioned much in that meeting. I think that a report coming back about the joint organisations is a good idea, and I support that as well. We should look at other alternatives. Maybe we can look at Mudgee as well. You know, we are an area that sits in between the Blue Mountains, the Central West and Mudgee, so I think it's a great notice of motion and I support it.
Anyone else wishing to speak tonight? Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, Mayor Statham, over the COVID period, being with West Rock, we didn't really see much bang for our buck. However, over that COVID period in West Rock, they run in Central New South Wales joint organisation. They run a very good tourism campaign, which if we were part of, we would have been involved. But because we weren't part of, we weren't involved in that, and it's still going to this day. So hopefully, we can support this motion and move on.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Goodsell, right of reply.
Just a brief comment, Mayor, please.
Councillor Marnie.
I'm not completely convinced. I'm not also convinced of the merits of staying with West Rock. Lithgow finds itself in a funny position that it's not seen by the outer metropolitan, and I'm not sure it's completely seen by the central west. It tends to be left in isolation at times. I don't know, and I haven't spoken to Councillor Coleman, whether in fact other joint council organisations like Oberon and Mudgee may in fact be a more effective way of coming together. I'm happy to receive more information on it, but I'm not really seeing a compelling case for either party at this stage from what I've seen happen in Lithgow over the last 20 odd years.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Goodsell, right of reply. So I'll put the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment? The amendment now becomes the motion. All those in favour of the motion? Unanimous. Councillor Leslie, did you? Yes. Unanimous. Thank you, councillors.
No. If I voted against it, it can't be unanimous.
Councillor Leslie voted against that. Thank you. 9.2, Economic Development and Environmental Reports. Have somebody please move this report.
Happy to.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Bryce? Oh, I didn't hear that. Councillor Goodsell?
Oh, there's not too much to this one. It's just noting the calling in of a development application.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Bryce?
Yeah, it's just a calling in of some exploration holes that are going to happen, that they've asked to happen, and there's nothing that exciting about some holes.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Marnie?
I'll speak briefly on it. My reason for calling this in was there's significant community interest. I think it's important that we maintain our trust with our community in our decision making, and also give community members an opportunity to come and talk to the council as part of their decision making process.
So the point of order.
All right, I'll wait on that.
This is about drilling geotechnical holes.
Councillor Bryce, would you just come through the chair and make a point of order? That's okay.
Sorry, Mayor. This is about just drilling some holes.
Point of order, and then I'll just judge whether or not it's... So you want a point of order?
Yeah, this plan is, the DA is only for drilling holes.
That's correct, yes. Yep. I accept that.
I'm not quite sure what the point of order was, but I appreciate that the DA involves drilling holes. It also involves issues around Aboriginal sites. It involves a number of elements to the DA. That's not what I'm currently talking to. I'm talking about process. I'm talking about transparency and accountability. And I'm talking about the community having trust in our decisions. We're going to be required to have a number of difficult conversations with the community on a whole lot of levels. If we exclude the community from those conversations and those decision-making processes, I don't know that we're a better council for it. It may not in fact change my decision on it, but I would like to see the community have an opportunity to put their views in front of the council, as our speaker today, in public forum. I think that's the strength of this council over a long time, is it has allowed the community to come in and put forward their view as part of our decision making. And I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Leslie?
Thank you, Mayor. It also involves the construction of a road there. But I think the important aspect of this particular DA, and DAs can be called in to council to debate, is that it's a very minor part of a very major development. But the major development is a state significant development. However, this minor part, if approved by the council, would give a number of people an opportunity to say, well, you've already passed the DA on the drilling and the road making, and we've spent money and expenditure on this, so now you're morally obliged to approve the further development. Now, I don't accept that particular argument, but by calling it in, we at least put that argument out front. and so that the decision whether to approve or not approve is made by the councillors, and of course then councillors are responsible to their community and ultimately at an election, which is the precise reason why I called it in, so that the matter could be dealt with, the small part could be dealt with before the major part is dealt with by the state government.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Right of reply, Councillor Goodson. Oh, Councillor Goodwin. Sorry, yes, Councillor Goodwin.
Mayor Statham, this has been called in again to slow the progress of Lithgow down once again. This is just a geotech study solely for the purpose of determining if the site can be developed geotechnically. So it's not giving the green light to pumped hydro at all. It's allowing for the next inevitable stage of the process to continue to get to a stage where an environmental impact statement can occur with community consultation. Prior to this, this is essential, where council, people and groups can ask questions. At this point in time, anything that has been said to anybody or groups is mere speculation and guesswork, and God forbid scaremongering. Let's get the facts again and then debate the facts. A small minority of people are trying to keep Lithgow as a status quo and not wanting progression at all. I don't know what they want. You know, they don't want the Gardens of Stone, they don't want the highway, they don't want energy for waste, and now they don't want hydro. We need these industries to keep Lithgow sustainable, so tell me exactly what you want. I don't see anyone, all I see is a small minority of people telling us what they don't want. I just want some answers of what they do want. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Coleman.
Mayor Stephen, I wasn't going to speak, but I will. This is basically giving the public an opportunity to tell and speak to the councillors-elect. What happens on the night, whether we vote in favour of it or don't vote in favour of it, is here or there. For me, this is about giving the public an opportunity.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Anyone else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor Goodsell.
I do actually agree with that, and I agree with calling it in. I agree with any councillor calling in a development, but that's what it is just at this stage, and I really do look forward to the debate when it does come back to council. We've all had representations from people that are concerned, and that is their right, and we should be listening. We should be going to those meetings and getting as much information as we can on both sides. So when it does come back to council, I'll be very interested.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. 9.2.12. The proposed Exelou toilet and retaining wall, Greg Featherston Park, Bathurst Street, Rydal.
Happy to move.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Have a seconder, thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Councillor Coleman, would you like to speak?
It's just a DA being called in, Mayor Statham. It's purely, simply and clearly a DA being called in for the, as I said previously, for the public to view their opinion.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Leslie? Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Marnie?
I won't reiterate the statement I made before, but it's essentially the same principle. I think smaller communities are more at risk of not being seen and heard in processes, and I think it's appropriate that an opportunity is provided to them to speak to our council and inform our decision. That's all.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Bryce?
I was always under the impression that this particular project has had a lot of community consultation at Rydal. There's been an ongoing long-term issue, and I would have thought that the community have had plenty of time to have their say in this matter.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce.
I'd like to speak now, if I may.
No, you had your opportunity, Councillor Leslie.
I don't think that's true. I don't have to speak when you ask me to speak. I believe I could speak when appropriate in the council. I wasn't going to speak until Councillor Bryce just spoke.
You can speak.
enforcing. They would be minor in nature.
Thank you, Mr Edgecombe. Anybody else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor McGee.
No, I think I've said it all. Thank you.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Thank you. Against? Councillor Leslie and Councillor Goodsell. Thank you.
A point of order, Madam Mayor. The code of meeting practice that was carried at the recent council meeting is that people vote for it or against it, and it's carried on the voices. There is no requirement under the code of meeting practice to actually name councillors who have chosen to vote against it. If they wish to have their names recorded or their names read out, then of course they can ask for it. But the policy of actually naming councillors, as you did just then, is contrary to the current council's code of meeting practice.
I have been asked by the minute taker on several occasions for me to say the names, so it's clear for her she's by herself tonight. Thank you.
My point, Madam Mayor, is that there's no necessity to advise the minute taker, because the minute taker has no reason to include the people who are voting for or against in the minutes.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Item 9.3.3, Lithgow Roads Renewal Rain Event Damage. Somebody please move this recommendation. Councillor Marnie. A seconder, thank you. Councillor McGee. Councillor Marnie.
Thanks after the report, and also I'm going to get feedback from people in the Hartley. I realise work is happening very difficult. Sorry, my apologies. Just thanks to the staff. Just mentioning I'm getting thanks from people in the Hartley. I know there's been some work done in very difficult weather conditions, but the contractors and staff are pushing on, which is very much appreciated. And the quality of repairs are of a high standard. So this goes back to statements I've heard from the executive that they really want to go back and build better this time and do a high quality repair, and I think the community appreciates that, and that's certainly the feedback I'm getting so far. So just a thanks for that, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor McGee.
All very positive and just good to hear. Congratulations.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against that? Councillor Goodsell.
It says in the financial implications, sorry, going to the report again, but it says that our budget approved is to be confirmed with Resilience New South Wales. Are we accepting tendering without knowing what money we've got?
Mr Edgecombe.
Through you, Mayor Statham. Very, very good question. At this stage we are, but that is the way that the natural disaster recovery arrangements work. Once an eligible LGA is declared as natural disaster affected, which Lithgow has been for the March 2022 event, that then we remain in close contact with Transport for New South Wales regarding the estimated and actual quantum of damage, and those are reported and claimed back. Okay, so all of the work under this program has been reviewed by Resilience New South Wales and approved, and we continue to liaise with them and engage with them on an ongoing basis to make sure that our expenditure qualifies.
Thank you, Mr Edgecombe. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against this? Councillor Marnie, right of reply?
No.
I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. May I just make a point then, after speaking with Mr Edgecombe for some time, we have 15 contractors out, 15 areas of our LGA have contractors working furiously at the moment to repair damage to roads, so well done, Mr Edgecombe. 9.5, Finance and Assets Report, Quarter 3 Budget Review. 9.4.1. Thank you. Have somebody move this report, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin and Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Goodsell?
I haven't got too much to say, Mayor Statham. Nice to note that the financial position is satisfactory in this 3-month period.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin.
Yeah, the report speaks for itself.
Thank you, Councillor Goodwin. Anybody else wishing to speak? Any dissent? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Councillor Goodsell, would you like right of reply? No. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. 9.4.2, Finance Investment Report, April 2022. Have somebody move that?
Happy to move it.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell.
Bryce.
Sorry,
Bryce.
Councillor Bryce. I didn't see that. Sorry. Councillor O'Connor, would you like to speak to that?
You go with the recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Bryce? Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? I'll put the right of reply, Councillor O'Connor. Right.
No.
Thank you. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous. Thank you. 9.4.3, Finance Sewer Fund Dividend for 2020-21 year. Have somebody move this, please?
I'm happy to move it, but I've got a question.
I'm not sure who moved that.
Councillor Bryson.
Councillor, sorry, who moved that? Councillor Bryce. And seconded Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Bryce, would you like to speak to that?
No, I'm going to let Councillor Goodsell ask the question.
Councillor Goodsell?
It wasn't just a question. I think it got late in the day and I've just got help written underneath it. If I could just have a layman's terms in what this actually means so that the community can understand it.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Mr Gurney, thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I'll try. So the sewer fund had a surplus for the 2021 year, and under legislation, council can take a regulated dividend, as in there's a limit on the amount the council can take. So we've calculated that at around about 134,680, and that can be paid to the general fund to use for any purpose, but council proposes to put it towards building the working capital fund.
Thank you, Mr Gurney.
Sorry, question, please.
Yes, Councillor Marnie.
Just following on from Councillor Goodsell's question. Just a query, do we find ourselves leaving ourselves short in the sewer fund if dividends are taken out? That's I'm trying to understand as well. It might be something that would be useful as a bit of a briefing to councillors, just to understand. Obviously, a couple of us wouldn't mind a bit more information on that. If you,
Mr Gurney may be able to assist you, Councillor Marnie.
thank you.
The sewer reserve has a substantial amount in it which is held for future infrastructure projects, so it has no impact that we've assessed. It will have no impact on the sewer fund reserve. We're not proposing to take a dividend from the water fund, which does need to be rebuilt, but the sewer fund has sufficient in it for future needs.
Thank you, Mr Gurney. You happy with that, Councillor Marnie?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Leslie? Sorry, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Leslie, I think, had his hand up first, and then you can speak, Councillor O'Connor. I think.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. I was wondering if I could ask a really basic question, which is the sewer fund and there's a dividend. So where does the money come from, and where is the money expended? So, and I understand that between the two there's a profit, but I was wondering if I know it's a very simple question. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Mr Gurney, thank you.
The funds come from the surplus of the operating result. If it were a commercial private business, the sewer fund would pay tax. So effectively, it's taken from the equivalent of the taxation payment that council would otherwise need to make if it was a private business.
Thank you, Mr Gurney. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor O'Connor.
Yes, if there's that money is surplus, wouldn't it be better to check where the water is coming into the sewer from the storm water all over town, even if we had to hire contractors or whatever, and see every storm water, every sewerage pit when it rains down along Farmers Creek is spilling over, so it'd be a good idea to spend some of that money, in my view, to check it out. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Mr Trapp, thank you.
Through you, Mayor. We have in the next year's budget some projects regarding that, so smoke testing for illegal connections and sewer or stormwater infiltration into the sewerage. So that's all been accounted for, as well as some sewer relining throughout the LGA, and those will be ongoing programs. So we've still have accounted for those. This surplus has been found through a lot of operational savings that we've been able to have in the sewer fund, through some good efficiencies that we found in operations.
Mr Gurney would like to add to that, thank you.
The proposed dividend is 50% of the surplus of the sewer fund, so another roughly $135,000 goes to the sewer fund for future infrastructure projects, and that includes capital renewal projects. So there still is half of the surplus that does go to future projects.
Well done, Mr Trapp. Thank you, Mr Gurney. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against that? Councillor Bryce, right of reply? No, I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. 9.4.4, Lithgow Arick Independent Member Appointment. Could I have somebody move that, please?
I'd like to move it, but I would like to make an amendment to it.
Councillor Coleman, what is your amendment?
So, in the recommendation, it states that the council set the remuneration, for a certain amount. Which one? Oh, sorry. Yeah, I would just like to move the recommendation as it is, so I'll take that back.
Happy to second.
Getting ahead of myself. Sorry, Mayor Statham.
That's all right. Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Councillor Coleman, would you like to speak to that?
No, I think it's pretty straightforward.
Thank you. Councillor Goodsell? Anybody else wishing to speak? I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
Thank you. 9.4.5, Local Government Remuneration Tribunal Determination 2022.
Thank you. Move it.
I'd like to do an amendment.
Councillor O'Connor. Councillor O'Connor was in first. Have a seconder, please, Councillor O'Connor. Have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor McGee. Go back to Councillor O'Connor.
Yep, I think we should go with the 2% as recommended. That's all I got to say.
Well, you need to confirm with the second that he's actually moving that the fees be set at a 2% increase.
So, Councillor McGee, are you happy for the fees to be set as recommended, 2% increase?
If that is what the recommendation is, it just says the remuneration for councillors. So,
Councillor O'Connor is moving that.
Yes, for councillor.
He just needs to confirm if he agrees with the motion.
Yes. You agree with the motion, Councillor McGee? Yes, thank you.
So that's a second.
Yeah, Councillor O'Connor, would you like to speak to that?
No, I'll sit on that, thanks.
Thank you. Councillor McGee?
so are we moving for a 2% increase, as Councillor O'Connor said, or just as is recommended here?
Speak to it.
General Manager will speak to that. Thank you.
So it's my understanding that Councillor O'Connor has advanced a motion which is an alternate to that in the report, and that is that the council set the fees at a 2% increase from the existing fees, and that's spelled out on page 37. And Councillor McGee, you're being asked if you're seconding Councillor O'Connor's motion.
Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Coleman?
I'd like to do an amendment.
Yes, Councillor Coleman, your amendment?
So the motion that Councillor O'Connor has moved is what's in. Has he moved so the recommendation, when has he actually moved? Because the recommendation I wanted to move is the recommendation in the report that's on bottom page 37.
That's what he's moved, Councillor Coleman.
The figures don't say that on the screen. It says 11,340 for councillors, and with the 2% it's actually 11,567. That's not what I see on the screen. The figures are different.
Our minute taker tonight is by herself, so please be patient. She's doing her very best.
If I could please, Mayor Statham, can we confirm what's being moved? Because the figures have now changed on the screen. They have changed to 11,567 for councillors, and for the mayor that's changed to 24,495. So is that what's being moved?
That is correct, Councillor Coleman.
And so that includes the 2%? Yes.
That is correct, Councillor Coleman. So you don't wish to have an amendment now?
No, because it wasn't clear on the screen, Mayor Statham.
Right, thank you. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Marnie?
Just a question. What's our staff award increase this coming financial year?
Mr. Edgecombe? Oh, Mr. Gurney, perhaps.
Through you, Madam Mayor. The award increase for the final year of this award, the 2020 award, is 2.5%.
All right, I'm comfortable with that. Yep.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor Leslie?
Thank you, Mayor Statham. I'd like to foreshadow a motion, not an amendment to this one, but a foreshadowed motion. Would you like me to read at this stage?
Yes, thank you.
My foreshadowed motion is that Lithgow Council write to the Minister for Local Government and place this as an agenda item for the next LG NSW conference, requesting that all councillors and mayors throughout the state be paid the same remuneration, and that remuneration be set by the local government tribunal. So it's relevant to this, but it's not. I can't move an amendment to it. So I'd like to foreshadow this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against that? Councillor O'Connor, right of reply?
No, thanks.
So I'll put this motion first, thank you. All those in favour of the first motion? Unanimous. Councillor Leslie, I'll put your motion. All those in favour of Councillor Leslie's motion?
So yes.
You need a second to Councillor Leslie.
Thank you. I'll read it again. That Lithgow Council write to the Minister for Local Government and to place this as an agenda item for the next LGNSW conference, requesting that all councillors and mayors throughout the state be paid the same remuneration, and that remuneration to be set by the Local Government Remuneration Tribunal. Got a second?
Happy to second.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman.
So, speaking to it, all councillors and mayors have the same responsibility, and that is to serve their communities. That responsibility is the same whether you're a councillor in Lithgow, Oberon, Mudgee, or whether you are in Liverpool or Parramatta. The population of the LGA is irrelevant. The larger councils have larger administrations, but the workload on councillors is relatively even. And where it's not even, the larger councils, where it's not even, you will find that regional councils do greater work. Your average Sydney council does not have unmade roads, does not have dams or any water or sewerage responsibilities, does not have cemeteries, and does not have the tyranny of distance. Yes, they have more DAs, but those DAs are handled by staff and rarely make it to a council meeting, any more than DAs would make it to a council meeting in regional areas. And the average Sydney council has council meetings that are shorter than those in regional New South Wales. And I can attest this from personal experience. Not only are Sydney councils all paid far more, and they, in almost all instances, vote themselves the maximum remuneration available. They can do that because they're not worried about public comment. Regional councils like Lithgow, of course, are conscious of the impost on our ratepayers and generally opt for a lower remuneration. We've done that just now. We've done exactly that now. Check out the figures of what we could ask for and what we have asked for. It's, you know, they're vastly different. What I'm asking for here is that we take politics out of this decision and leave it with the tribunal. I'm aware that this could be a burden on ratepayers, in which case the financial assistance grants payable to each council should be adjusted to compensate those regional councils.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Councillor Coleman.
No, I think Councillor Leslie said it in a nutshell.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor Leslie, you're happy for me to put the motion?
I'll speak to it.
Oh, Councillor Marnie?
I'm going to support it and possibly seem like I'm opposing at the same time, but I just want to make a couple of comments. Looking at the work that rural councillors do, I look at the work the mayor does, it's significant. It's not small, and to keep up our contact with our communities is a 7-day option a lot of the time. So I completely support the equity of work. I think rural councils actually potentially work harder than some of the metropolitan councils. I just can't convince myself that we've got the capacity to pay the rates that are being paid in metropolitan councils. That's my concern. I think we've got significant financial pressures, so I would find it difficult to support a significant increase. But I do want to acknowledge the work that's been done by this current council, but previous councillors over the years for relatively low returns. So that's all.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against this? Councillor Goodsell?
I'd be terrified if they set if they were all lumped together and they set ours up. If we're all going to get the same remuneration and they put it up to 30 grand, we'd be under the pump. We wouldn't have the money to pay that. And although I do agree with Councillor Leslie, there's a lot more scrutiny on regional councillors. There's a lot more familiarity. There's a lot more. You're a bit of in big populations, you sort of don't have that a day-to-day knocking into residents where your expectations have to be met. But it's right. It's not equal. But I don't believe in changing it either.
Anyone else wishing to speak? Councillor McGee?
Yes, I think it's a much broader problem that I've heard described before in the actual distribution of the pie, as they call it. It seems to come down to population, and therefore we miss out. If we were to approach the tribunal on that matter and get that money first, then pay could be forthcoming, a reward, so to speak. But to get that distribution of the money in the first place equalised and taken into consideration of LGA size, not population, would be a more pertinent way to go about it, I think.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Mr Gurney is going to address the councillors. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, just a comment on the foreshadowed amendment. It would also require a legislative change to the Local Government Act. Section 239 of the Act states that the Remuneration Tribunal must at least once every 3 years, Part B, place each council and mayoral office into one of the categories it has determined.
Thank you, Mr Gurney. Right of reply, Councillor Leslie.
Thank you, Mayor Statham. Yes, I'm very much aware of the concerns that Councillor Goodsell expressed, which is why in my initial comments I stated that where this happens, it should be advised to the Minister for Local Government that financial assistance grants should be adjusted to make that difference. I'm also aware that if Lithgow Council wish to, and I don't recommend this, and I didn't support this in the original motion, but we could, under the rules we have, vote for $21,100 per councillor. We are, in fact, voting for $11,567. So that's $10,000 less than we could if we so choose. Now, it therefore comes back to, yes, we're being serious. We're considering our responsibilities to our community, but those same considerations are never taken by the Sydney councils. They don't worry about that consideration. They just almost overwhelmingly just say, well, this is what the tribunal says. We're not going to argue with that. We'll take the full amount and look at the figures. So, and I'm also aware that the Local Government Act, I thank Mr Gurney for his comments, because we have to start, if should this motion be carried, we have to start the process somewhere, and the way we do that is to advise the Minister for Local Government that here's an issue that is relevant. I think it's also something that could be raised, Madam Mayor, if you attend country mayors associations, that's something that could be raised at other forum, and of course one way to do it is to raise it as an agenda item for the New South Wales Local Government Association. It would be interesting to see just how our city brethren take to this particular motion and what justifications they have for the very large sums that they take. And I'm proud to have been a councillor on Drummoyne Council, and I'm proud to be a councillor here. Personally, I would do it for far less, but because I think it's an important part of my own personal lifestyle. But I don't see why other councillors who are perhaps as well off as I am are forced to scrimp and save in a manner that our city brethren feel no worries about.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. I'll put Councillor Leslie's foreshadowed motion. All those in favour say aye.
Aye.
That is lost, Councillor Leslie. Thank you. 9.5, policies and governance.
Happy to move that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor.
I'll second it.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Councillor O'Connor, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, it makes perfect sense that if somebody is here, they get a chance to tender straight away, not wait for 12 months.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Bryce?
The same.
Thank you, Councillor Bryce. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Councillor Marnie.
I'll just speak to it briefly. Obviously, this has been an issue that's been pretty close to my heart. I've worked with small businesses, procuring small business and large businesses for about 25 years. Watched small businesses grow in local government areas and provide important services and extension of services to council. I appreciate that the council, I hope, is supporting this. It provides an opportunity for us to see our local businesses very active in our service delivery. We note what's happened at Lake Pillins, which was the rebuild was delivered by a local business, which excites me. I know that the rebuild in the Blue Mountains is being largely led by a local business as far as tourism infrastructure. They're the exciting forward-facing jobs that we have here shaping up in our community. I felt the 12 months put an unnecessary disadvantage to new businesses moving into the area, and I appreciate that staff have considered that, and I hope the council will support this amendment to the procurement policy, and that's all I've got to say on that.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie. Councillor Goodsell?
Yeah, I was just going to briefly say thank you, Councillor Marnie, for bringing this up. You brought it up at the Finance Committee and now it's been converted into policy. Well done.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against? Right of reply, Councillor O'Connor.
Councillor Mahoney said it all. Thank you.
Thank you. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. Council committee reports, item 10. Finance Committee meeting minutes, the 20th of April 2022. Have somebody move that? Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. Have a seconder, thank you. Councillor Marnie. Councillor Goodsell, would you like to speak to that? No. Any dissent here? Would you like to speak to it, Councillor Marnie? No. I'll put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Unanimous, thank you. Operations Committee meeting, the 21st of April 2022.
Mayor, I'm happy to move it, but I want to move something else. I'm sorry. I want to move something else.
What, are you moving this or something else, Councillor?
No, I'm moving something else. Not this particular recommendation. I'd like to change it.
So you're making an amendment or
Yes.
complete change?
I'm just going to change it. I'm going to change point 2.
Well, if you say what it is, and then I'll see if I can get a seconder. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to move the following, that Council 1, note the minutes of the Operation Committee held on the 21st of April 2022. 2, maintain the status quo of the Operation Committee as applied by the previous Council.
Do I have a seconder for that?
I'll second that.
Thank you,
I'll
Councillor
second
Leslie. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Ms. Stathan. If it isn't broken, we shouldn't fix it. Roads and drains are our bread and butter. We have to respect the community. It doesn't matter where I am, whether I'm at Coles shopping, whether I'm at the Tin Shed having lunch with my daughter, whether I'm at Taranara, I get constantly asked about roads and drains. And I would like to congratulate Councillor McGee, who's the chair of this committee. It's important that we keep abreast of what's going on and we're updated on a regular basis.
That was agreed upon and discussed at length, and yeah, the Operations Committee felt very comfortable with the 3-month setting, so I'd like to leave it as it stands.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Anybody else wishing to speak for or against that? Councillor Goodsell.
Now, I've already got this wrong once tonight, so I'd like to foreshadow a motion as well. Do I wait now?
I'm happy to take it now, Councillor Goodsell.
Am I able to foreshadow the motion that we accept the recommendation as it stands?
I think so. Yes, I've been advised that you can. So would you like to move that way, Councillor Goodsell?
I would.
If you can get a seconder, thank you.
Second that.
Thank you, Councillor O'Connor. Councillor Goodsell, right of reply then?
No, wait a minute. So you're advancing that as an amendment?
Yeah. Go back to Councillor Coleman.
I don't accept that as an amendment, so my understanding is that's foreshadow, but this motion has to be voted on first.
Councillor Coleman, yes. Would you like a right of reply? Is there anybody else wishing to speak before I put the motion? Councillor Marnie?
Sorry, we have a
Leslie?
very simple motion at the moment. Councillor Coleman has moved a motion and Councillor Goodsell has moved an amendment. Councillor Coleman has moved a motion basically to remove the items in 6.1 on page 43 and Councillor Goodsell has moved an amendment to reincorporate those items. So it's one or the other. And
I will go with the amendment first. So Councillor Coleman, you've got Councillor Leslie seconding your amendment. Councillor McGee has spoke against that.
in that case, Madam Mayor, I'd like to speak, now take my opportunity, I'd like to speak both against the amendment and for the motion.
Yes, when you're ready, Councillor Leslie.
Thank you. Well, as Councillor McGee said, the executive seems to think this is a good idea, but we don't work for the executive of this council. We work for the people. And it's very valuable to have a council committee where matters are discussed, issues are raised, and we can feed off each other. We can learn what other people are thinking. It's a gestalt. It's a committee. That's the value of a committee. A number of people around, including staff, all free to speak easily and openly on and sometimes on a number of occasions on issues. Let me just run through the items of the last Operations Committee meeting. We had an item on natural disaster impacts, damage to essential public service, assets, alternative routes to the Walgan Valley. Now there's an interesting one, alternative routes to the Walgan Valley. I had a meeting in the Walgan Valley a couple of weeks ago, and I asked about the one of the alternative routes was the donkey steps, and I was advised by the residents down there that particular aspect is not happening. Now I don't know whether that's true or not, but when I drove back up the gap and I looked out to the left.
Point of order, Mayor Statham. This is not an Operations Committee meeting.
I will accept that point of order, Councillor McGee. So, Councillor Leslie, you've made your point. You've seconded Councillor Coleman's amendment.
Did I just get... Could I have that thing again? Did I just get that you have decided that I can't speak on a matter in the Operations Committee meeting, which was dealing with alternative routes to the Walgan Valley, and that you've just now ruled that I cannot speak to that particular item?
Councillor Leslie, I think what I was saying is very clear. We've got an item in front of us. We're not digressing. We're talking about now what is happening with the committee, of the Operations Committee, and it's very direct. We don't need to go into every single item of an Operations Committee. That is not what we're here for. We're here at the moment to either approve the recommendation, approve the amendment, or get a result. We don't need to talk about every single item in your experience, because we'd be here as we would if any councillor brought this up all night. We need to get a result, and the result is very clear either way. I do not mind, but I will be fair, and I don't think we need to digress to any meeting that you've been at regarding that. We all get complaints every day of our lives, and I'm very happy to take them, and you should be too if we're a councillor.
So that's your ruling that I cannot...
Speaking. No, I didn't say that. You're very, very happy for you to continue speaking, but we don't need to have on dot point form different matters to do with this. We need to keep on track. Thank you, Councillor Leslie, but you're very, very happy for you to keep speaking.
Right. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the alternative route to the Walgan Valley, for example, had a whole series of logs, about 20 of them, preventing access to it. But we'll move on from that. It'd be interesting, and that, of course, was something that I was unaware of until I spoke to the people in the Walgan Valley. But fine. Further items that we dealt with in the Operations Committee was the Central West Orana Regional Transport Plan. Very interesting. Current strategic plans, Main Street flooding. I think that Mr. Smith, who spoke at Public Forum today, would be very pleased to know that we are dealing with this on a regular monthly basis and to making sure that whatever we can find out, whatever we can do is something that's being dealt with. The Walgan Road, Macaulay Street slope stabilisation. I believe that the people who live in the Walgan Valley and Macaulay Street would be pleased to know that it came up at the last Operations Committee meeting and that councillors have the opportunity to monitor and check this progress on a monthly basis instead of once every 3 months. The Clarence to Wang pipeline, the Tarana water supply, smoke testing. Now there's one. I think that the residents of the council would be pleased to know that there are councillors who wish to take this to be interested in it. We had tonight questions about the sewer fund. I got an answer. I wasn't particularly comfortable with the answers I got, but I was happy to know that I could wait to an Operations Committee and get further matter. This council's core responsibility is roads and drains. That's the key thing, and yet the very committee that advises councillors who are members of the committee and advises those councillors who wish to turn up, or ask their fellow councillors to ask a question on issues like that, are now denied that opportunity to get an input directly to the staff. I wonder why we want to be councillors. If this is the attitude, we'll do it once every 3 months, and by the way, won't the executive be happy? It's not why I'm here, and if this is carried, I'd be extremely disappointed. It's the core responsibility of this council, and it's the core responsibility of councillors to keep. I can't. I'm just flabbergasted by the fact that some councillors, think this is so unimportant that we only need to meet every 3 months.
Thank you, Councillor Leslie. Anybody else wishing to speak? Councillor Marnie?
Just briefly to this issue, I see all of the committee work we do is really important, but I see two core committees that I'm involved with as needing this level of attention. The Finance Committee, and for me the Operations Committee, is another one. I recognise the administrative burden that goes on with running committees, but there is such significant operational challenges in front of us. They are at the centrepiece of most of our community concerns, and I actually support Councillor Leslie in his thinking behind why he sees it as being an essential committee that has a regular frequency. My apologies, I wasn't at the last Operations Committee, but the subject matter that's been covered in it is very significant.
Thank you, Councillor Marnie.
Yeah. Councillor who said thank you. So we just need to be clear that no, it was moved as an amendment, wasn't it?
No. Councillor Coleman needs to reply to this amendment, and I'll put the amendment. Yeah. Councillor Coleman, your right of reply to this amendment, thank you.
My right applied to the motion, yes, thanks, Mayor Statham. Roads and drains, it is our core business. We need to be meeting monthly. I'm not even on the Operations Committee, however, I think it is absolutely crucial to keep updated in regards to our core business. We work for the community wants to know, they want us to bring things forward. It's absolutely imperative that this committee meets monthly. Yeah, look, I'm just flabbergasted that they would even think of going to quarterly. We need to be meeting on this meeting. We need to be meeting monthly. We need to be updated regularly.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. I'll put the motion. All those in favour of the motion?
Didn't we move an amendment?
Haven't we already moved
Moved an amendment. You need a second for the amendment. The amendment should be debated first.
The amendment was from Councillor
Goodsell.
Goodsell. I'm not sure if there was a second.
No, there wasn't for that.
Just by way of clarification, it's my understanding we had a motion moved by Councillor Coleman, seconded Councillor Leslie. Initially, I think Councillor Goodsell was foreshadowing a motion, but then it was my understanding that during the course of that bouncing around the room, it became an amendment, an amended motion to the original. We just need to clarify who the seconder was to your amended motion, and which is Goodwin. And it's my understanding that we just had the debate on the amendment. It's my take on it. And therefore, with that debate exhausted, we return to the mover of the amendment to the final right of reply, and then put the motion, and we go from there.
Goodness. That seems very complicated.
It is always.
What is it? So could I possibly ask Councillor Goodsell, please, to retract her foreshadowed motion until we've dealt with this amendment, or for Councillor Coleman's moving and seconding?
It's an amendment. She moved an amendment.
All right. Councillor Goodsell, you want to go back, your amendment is to go back to the original recommendation.
Correct.
Thank you.
And I would like to talk to it.
Wants to speak on that amendment before.
I know.
Yes, that's right. Is there anyone else wishing to speak on Councillor Goodsell's amendment? Councillor McGee.
I'll speak to that amendment. Once again, just to reiterate that the executive are available at any time to be contacted regarding any matter, and if it is urgent, it shouldn't have to wait till the end of the month or a monthly meeting. It can be taken straight to them for instant action, and that was made perfectly clear, and if anything were to change in that sort of way of thinking and acting, then that would be a different story. But as it stands, I'm convinced that this is a very good way to go.
Thank you, Councillor McGee. Anybody else wishing to speak? Right of reply, Councillor Goodsell.
So this decision wasn't taken lightly by me. I was very invested in the operations committee last year, and I commend the staff, and I'm happy to go back to bi-monthly or monthly meetings if it seems as though the staff taking a more strategic direction, a high-level focus, and not being bogged down in detail on a monthly basis. If it doesn't work, we'll change it. But roads and drains, our core business. Finance, is it not our core business? How often does the Finance Committee meet? How often does Economic Development meet? Just as important. Yet we have live meetings with all councillors in attendance. Why is one more important than the other? Roads and drains are certainly not our core business, and I'd like the meetings and give the staff an opportunity to do the 3 monthly thing.
Thank you, Councillor Goodsell. I'll put the amendment. All those in favour of the amendment? Carried. The amendment has been carried. The amendment now becomes...
Madam Mayor, I'd like to have a division on that.
No worries at all. Councillor McGee, for. Councillor O'Connor, Bryce, Goodsell and Goodwin for the motion. And myself. Thank you. Against, Councillor Marnie, Councillor Leslie and Councillor Coleman.
That's my understanding. Interjecting, but I think the amendment becomes the motion.
It does.
So we do the same again.
So the amendment becomes the motion. So all those in favour of the motion? Against is Councillor Leslie, Councillor Coleman and Councillor Marnie.
Yes, again, I'd like
A division?
A division on that, thank you.
Thank you. So 4 for the minute taker is Councillor McGee, Councillor O'Connor, Councillor Bryce, Councillor Goodsell, Councillor Goodwin and myself. Against, Councillor Leslie, Councillor Coleman and Councillor Goodmani. Thank you. Business of great urgency, thank you.
I have one.
Councillor Goodsell.
I'd like an update on the MRI, please.
I can give you an update on that.
I'd like it to go out to the community.
Point of order, why is this a matter of urgency?
I don't remember that it is.
Why could this not have been put as a notice of motion?
Councillor Goodsell, I don't think it's an emergency. I've been to the hospital last week for a meeting, and also to the private hospital. It's going to be a good outcome. Thank you. Anyone else wishing to speak matters of great urgency?
Quite sure if this is a matter of great urgency, but I know that you and I have received representation from Linda and Steve McCullen about heavy diesel noise in Inch Street. I'm hoping that maybe the staff could come back to me on that issue.
That has been an ongoing issue now for several months, and I've reported it on several occasions. It's a very difficult situation for them and for council staff because the railway is involved. So which director would like to speak on that, please?
I'm happy for this to come back. I just wanted to raise it, yeah.
I probably don't think it's a matter of great urgency. It certainly is for that family, and I feel for them, and it's not long since I've contacted them again, but certainly they need a reply, and I will make sure that is in train. Thank you. Thank you for the people in the public gallery that have joined us this evening. I hope you've got something out of what you've witnessed tonight, and thank you to all the councillors. Thank you. Would all councillors please remain in the chambers, please? Thank you.